Of the many unusual things that happened in Revere, Massachusetts on the morning of July 28th, there's one aspect that the town's fire chief finds the most remarkable.
The fact that nobody could actually was killed, it's truly amazing. You know, whole roofs ripped off. You can see the damage. City Hall, everybody was in their offices when all those windows blew in. Truly amazing.
While this tiny suburb just north of Boston has seen its share of nasty New England weather, the tornado that touched down on that July morning was something this working-class town had never seen before, raising questions for local residents about just what is happening with the weather, and if such extreme events are something they should become accustomed to.
In my 63 years in Massachusetts, I was born here, never had tornadoes before.
We've seen everything but, I guess, you know, from the blizzard of '78 to the no-name storm in '91 and a slew of nor'easters and hurricanes in between. But the tornado was unique, to say the least.
Estimated to be an EF2 on the enhanced Fujita scale, the tornado scale developed to measure wind speed and related damages. This was indeed unique for Revere. With winds clocking in between 111 and 135 miles per hour, an EF2 is not as mighty as the maximum 200-mile-an-hour plus EF5. But Revere's EF2 did manage to damage nearly 200 buildings and leave 14 of them uninhabitable.
This is weird. You know, Massachusetts was so nice weather-wise. All my life was just fine.
Right.
And now, tornadoes like they have in the Midwest, like they have down south, this is terrible. This is so different.
With official weather records dating to 1950, Suffolk County had never been hit by a tornado, even though neighboring counties had been struck in the past. But National Weather Service meteorologist Glenn Field says that while the tornado was indeed unusual, from a historical perspective, Suffolk County was in fact due for a tornado.
I can tell you that while it was rare in Suffolk County, they were actually due, because the average, we typically get 1 to 3 tornadoes across southern New England in a given year.
While Field's primary task, and that of the Taunton, Massachusetts Weather Service, is to provide southern New England with day-to-day weather forecasts, he says he's regularly asked about climate change and extreme weather.
Well, people often ask, is weather getting more extreme? And I can understand that question, but as you go back through history, you can see that it actually comes in cycles. We had a very bad period in 1953 with the Worcester tornado, and that was an EF4. It was on the ground for 46 miles, killed 94 people. So for me to say what exactly is happening over a long period of time, I can just tell you what I know since the 1950s, for example, in this particular area.
Strangely enough, Field's insight into the history of weather, and more importantly, where the Revere tornado falls within the context of extreme weather in southern New England, provides insight into the difficulty in understanding if such events are becoming more frequent. Interestingly enough, this is where the ever-important distinction between climate and weather may actually need to merge.
Well, we know something, but not nearly enough.
MIT professor Carrie Emanuel says there is very little research taking place between the scientific camps exploring climate change and those researching and watching local extreme weather. Despite this lack of overlap, Emanuel says that the current state of climate models are able to create forecasts for some weather events.
The answer depends very much on the kind of storm we're talking about. I would say probably the one that I think we have the best grasp of is the distribution of heavy rain events. It's a story in some ways of the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Where it's already wet, it tends to get wetter. Where it's already dry, it tends to get drier. I would say the next thing on the list is hurricanes, and there's widespread convergence in the community that globally will go up. That is, the incidence of very high category, say Saffir-Simpson 3, 4, or 5, will probably go up. Doesn't mean it goes up everywhere, but on the average it goes up. Tornadoes are at the other end of the spectrum of knowledge. I think we know almost nothing about how tornadoes respond to climate change. By the way, I think we can know quite a bit about that. I think we have the tools to understand that. We just haven't focused much attention on that until very recently.
So then where does this leave Revere, Massachusetts? Was the tornado a byproduct of a changing climate, or was it just their turn? With all the speculation about just what is happening with the weather, does what happened in Revere provide any insight into whether extreme events are increasing? In this case, history says it was time, and climate models are not yet capable of a counter-argument. However, what these two camps perhaps tell us is that with over 60 years since New England's last Category 3 hurricane, when the next hurricane arrives, models point to a storm with a bit more punch. And with history as a guide, that punch is long overdue. Christopher Booker, Financial Times, Revere, Massachusetts.